Hello, my name is Denis Salgado, and I'm a research fellow at the Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts.
I'm David Flood, and I'm a research fellow at the Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts. And today we're answering the question, what is a textual variant? Now, a textual variant, to give a brief definition, is any time we have two copies of the same text and they're not the same. That difference we call a variant.
Well, let me give you an example of a textual variant. If you take, for instance, Romans 1:1, we read, Paul, a servant of Christ Jesus. Many manuscripts have the order Christ Jesus reversed, Jesus Christ. And that difference is a textual variant.
Now, most variants that we encounter in the Greek New Testament manuscripts are insignificant. We would think of them as typos. They are perhaps spelling mistakes, obvious errors, or differences so minor that they have no effect on the meaning of the text at all.
It's interesting that, sometimes scribes simply copy the same thing twice as they were looking back and forth from the exemplar, which is the manuscript from which they're copying. So their eyes were going back and forth from the exemplar to the manuscript or the document they're producing, and their eyes would betray them. Their eyes would fall in a different place, and they thought that they were about to copy that, but they had just copied that section, so they ended up creating a duplication, which is called a dithography or double writing, right? Another problem was that sometimes words ended with the same letters, or it started with the same letters, and because of that, they would skip whole sections of the exemplar. Those are obvious mistakes. We can explain those differences as just the result of scribal lapses, right? So they are insignificant.
And that happens all the time, that a scribe will skip from the same set of letters to the next set of letters that are the same. If the beginning of the word matches the beginning of another word, we call that homoarcton. If it matches the end of the word, we call that homoteleuton.
Another very common difference that we find in manuscripts is that of spelling variations. Scribes would write the same word in different ways for various reasons. Just like today, in English, we have different ways of writing the same word with different spellings, and the different spellings are accepted in different countries and communities. And they're not necessarily incorrect. They're just different ways of spelling the same word. And that happened also in Koine Greek or the Byzantine Greek. Now, there are many variants, David, that are significant, right?
Right, and by significant, we mean variants that do affect the meaning of the text. And they can't be easily explained as scribal blunders or typos. These are things we need to investigate and reconcile.
For example, sometimes scribes added clarifications to the text. Other times they wanted their text to match a version with which they were familiar. Maybe a verse that was similar and it was in a different context, in a different book of the New Testament. Sometimes they added and omitted things. Those are all examples of what can be regarded as significant variants.
One of the ways that this can happen is that you have a reader of a manuscript, maybe an individual, and they are making notes. They're reading in Matthew, and they remember that exact phrase is also said in Mark, and so they may make note of that, and they may write in their Bible. People wrote in their Bibles, and then when it comes time for that manuscript to be copied, when it is serving as the exemplar, then the scribe that comes after has to make the decision of what do I do with that marginal note? Was that a correction? Is that something that should have been put into the main text? And so it may be put into the main text, make good grammatical sense. It's clearly a different reading. It's a variant, but we can often identify these as what they are, which are often harmonizations.
Now, David, the presence of these variants in the New Testament textual tradition, does that mean that the text of the New Testament is unreliable?
No, the evidence and tools that we have makes it so that the variants do not prevent us from reconstructing the text of the New Testament.
And that's precisely the discipline of New Testament textual criticism. Scholars have been working tediously for so many years. There are so many manuscripts, as we discussed in our last video. So we have plenty of evidence, we have plenty of variants, but we have lots of scholars and methods and science behind this discipline that can give us confidence that we are going back to the earliest text of the New Testament.